Hi, everyone. My name's Craig. I'm a derivatives trader at an investment bank. I'm a dad, and I'm also a competitive bodybuilder. I hope that some of the things that I share in these videos might help you to achieve your fitness goals, or at least show that it's not impossible to balance a career and fitness at the same time. First of all, I wanted to thank everyone that tuned into my video last time. I really appreciate all of the comments and the fact that so many people took the time to watch it. Absolutely humbled by that. And to all the people that subscribed or liked or left a comment, thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. That is sort of what drives YouTube, and I recognize that. And thank you very much for taking the time to help me out. Today, I want to talk about making adjustments when things don't go to plan. Because as we all know, life doesn't exactly always go according to plan. So in these cases, what do we do? Generally speaking, we just have to adjust on the fly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present a few examples of what, stuff that happens in the way that I would handle those situations. And hopefully you can take some hints from that, or take some ideas away from that in terms of how you can handle these situations on your own when you run into them. So the first thing, first and foremost, is just to make sure that you don't panic. Obviously with my training schedule and also my nutrition plan, it's quite detailed, and trying to make sure that everything is exactly perfect all the time is quite difficult. That said, there are usually pretty decent solutions that I can reach when, just simply by shifting things around, et cetera, et cetera. So, for example, one instance would be if somebody is trying to schedule a business dinner with me later in the week that I didn't really have planned. Um, so, of course, we're going to go back to Excel for this. Um, so this is what my current training and diet looks like. You'll notice that depending on what I'm training, my diet actually changes as well. That's just because some body parts need more energy than other body parts. One thing that's interesting to note is that on the high days, I actually have a free meal at the end of the day, meaning that I'm free to eat whatever I want as long as I get all of my meals in beforehand. So obviously, using a high day on a day when they're trying to put a business dinner into my schedule later in the week, that's usually a pretty opportune, a pretty easy way to ensure that I stay 100% on diet with no deviation at all. So in those cases, what I would do is I would just do something like, say the dinner comes in on Thursday. I would just move my Thursday shoulder session to Sunday, and then swap in my legs there on Thursday, and then that would give me the freedom to eat whatever it is that the sales and the client have decided. And basically eat without restriction, eat everything I want, have dessert if I want, that sort of stuff. So that's the simplest way to solve these sorts of problems. We don't always get a real heads up with respect to client dinners and things like that. Sometimes they get thrown in unexpectedly, like, say, for example, if you have to step in for your boss or something like that. In those cases, then I will take an approach more like trying to massage my macros, where basically if I know that I have to go for a meal and it's going to be something that's actually kind of hard to get into the framework, like Italian food, if it's something like that, then basically what I'll do is I'll try to adjust my macros before going out for dinner. So if like an Italian food feast, you'll generally go through well over 100 carbs. So, basically what I would do is I'd knock the carbs out of these two and then use all 120 of them in my last meal. Obviously, this isn't like optimal, but given the situation, it's kind of the best thing that we can do. Um, I'm not really a proponent of so say for example, if you find out immediately before the dinner and have no time to adjust your macros before actually going to dinner, in those cases, I think that it's actually more important just to go to the dinner because you have to. And then following that, just getting back on your plan. I don't really like the idea of trying to compensate by depriving yourself after the meal, as opposed to adjusting for it beforehand. I don't know why I believe that. There's probably no science to it, but it's just I think that it's easier to get back on your plan rather than knowing that you ate something unexpectedly and then have to suffer for it after. Because the fact that you had a business dinner pop up is not really your fault, right? Now that said, if this sort of thing happens over and over again, you're going to have to come up with a bit of a better plan on how to deal with these types of situations. But generally speaking, I would just try to get back on the original plan. Um, so another thing too is when you have these situations, like, is there some sort of reasonable alternative, right? So, for example, if we look back at my macros in my plan here, um, is there some sort of food at this restaurant where I think I would be able to get something close to, like, say, for example, 50 protein, 50 carbohydrates, and 7 fats. Because if I do that, then I can just use one of those meals and, we'll put this back to my current levels here. But, is there the chance that I would be able to use one of these meals and then say before then, adjust down to 35 or, something in meal 4 and then save the 50 for a meal 6 so that I have a 50-57 meal in meal 6. Is there something at the restaurant that we're going to that I could have like that, right? And the answer is sometimes yes, right? For example, if I'm going to a steak restaurant, it's actually, it would be it would be simple enough to be able to get, a 50-57 meal or something very close to it. Like if you got, say, 160 gram tenderloin steak that's grilled with nothing on it and just salt, and then maybe like 150 grams of rice, right? And some steamed asparagus or steamed broccoli or something like that, then you're actually probably looking pretty close to those macros anyways. So, it's also very helpful, obviously, to have a sort of reference point of what foods contain what macros, right? And if you're not familiar with that, then I strongly recommend trying tracking your food using one of the tracking apps like MyFitnessPal or one of the many other trackers that are out there. It provides tremendous insight into, like, what you actually eat, even if you're not trying to follow a diet and you're just tracking what you're eating. Just by going through that exercise, a lot of the time you can look at it and go, oh, I'm eating, so much fat, or something like that. And it can be really eye opening. The next piece of advice that I have is just to make sure that you try to contain the damage. So this is kind of what I was alluding to earlier in terms of, if you have to have a meal that's completely off plan, don't let that blown meal become a blown day. And similarly, don't let that blown day become a blown week. So if you can contain it to just sort of, one off piece meal, then that's fine, right? You don't need to try to adjust for it or anything like that. Just get back on your plan the next day and make sure that you continue to carry on with it. That's the most important thing. In terms of some of the other issues that I've run into are like instances where you forget or don't prep your food. In those cases, you've really got to work on trying to build a roster of acceptable meals that are easily accessible to you from your workplace. So, of course, there's a lot of food options around work for most of us that work in an office. So, is there something close by that's easy enough to grab that you can swap in, on those days that you forget a meal? So, like in my case, I'll look for something like if they have like a Singaporean chicken and rice or something like that, I'll look for that. And that's really helpful. I used to live not far away, or excuse me, work not far away from a place called DNS Cafe that had all of this sort of like, athlete friendly food, which was really good. And yeah, just kind of, also knowing what's available in convenience store that's near you, things like that, that really helps in those circumstances. And you can kind of build your meals on the fly. In the instances, as I mentioned earlier, about the unexpected business trips, or business dinners rather, the one of the best things you can do is obviously if you can influence whoever it is to go to a place that's going to be easy for you to adhere to. So as I was mentioning, something like a steakhouse usually has very easy options to be able to pick meals that are close to what you're required to eat. And then barring that, then is it possible to adjust a little bit, adjust what you're eating beforehand to make sure that you don't go, massively off your macros for the day. Finally, in the instances whether there's a business trip, on this one, honestly, I just say do your best. So try to make sensible food decisions on all of the meals that you eat. And that's kind of the best thing that you can do, because inevitably when you're on business trips, you've got to go out for dinner with people. You've got to, you're constantly eating on the road, et cetera, et cetera. It's, you really don't have the freedom to try to be 100% compliant to your diet. Now, that said, if you are making sort of intelligent choices about where and what you're eating, you don't have to deviate too far, and you can actually hit things. If you want to be really OCD about it, then depending on where you're going, sometimes they have meal prep services that you can actually buy into. So I've had instances in the past where, for example, I'm preparing for a show and I have a business trip that gets slotted in. I would actually contact a meal prep company before, usually a week before, going on the business trip, then have the food delivered to my hotel room, where I would then pick it up and basically eat those meals for the duration of the business trip. Another thing that's actually very helpful when you're on business trips are things like supplements. So protein bars, stuff like that. I'm usually not a really big advocate for those kinds of things. I think that most calories that you consume should actually be coming from real food, just because, that's it's real food. It's not processed. So I think that our system, it's just better for our system. That said, the convenience can't be argued with, and in an extreme situation like when you're on the road on a business trip, that's pretty much exactly what those things are built for. So by all means, if they help you to stay closer to your diet, then I would recommend using them. The key thing is just to remember to focus on what you can actually do. In 2 to 3 years, I assure you that no one is going to remember the one time that you had a meal off plan. That said, we'll all remember if you allowed it to derail your entire plan and wound up falling off it. Thanks a lot for watching. Please let me know if you have questions or comments below. Please like and subscribe and hit the thumbs up if you like this video and want to see more. And if you're interested in contacting me personally, then please reach out to me via my website, which is in the comment box below, also written right here. Really appreciate you taking the time to watch. Thank you very much, and see you next time.